Hi. I'm a trans woman, and trans and non-binary people like me are less than 1% of the population of the UK. Yet, you probably heard a lot about us in the mainstream media recently. In fact, since 2012, there have been 15,939 articles, negative articles in the mainstream media about trans and non-binary people. We reached our peak of over 1,000 articles earlier this year in a 30-day period. That's 33 articles a day attacking a population less than 1% of the population. It would be no surprise to any of the many marketing experts in this room that mass communication and message reinforcement works. So over the last 4 years, opinions and approval for trans rights has dropped like a stone. And actually in 2022, the vast majority of people in this country refuse to acknowledge who I am and see me as a violent risk to other women. But I'm not here to talk about the media. I'm not here to talk about changing your views on trans rights. I want to talk about something in this room, which is you. Now, I'm sure all of you, through your career, have had moments where you've gone, just not going to say that, let it slide. Got a CMO with a terrible idea, but you know what? Smile and wave, boys. Or you've had a boss that's just, the approach they're taking is so wrong, but you know what? It's not worth the effort. Imagine you are the social media manager at Shell, and you've just put out this really innocuous tweet. Nothing really to complain about in that. Within seconds, you've got replies like this coming back at you, calling you a liar, proponent of greenwashing, or someone sitting in a room looking up creative ways to mislead. How do you think that feels? Maybe you've said that. Or treat it like a pitch, which we all know means throw reality out the window because we're going to flog it anyway. or that. Let's change ourselves for the room because the client would like a world where nothing is different. Well, in a minute, I'm going to ask you to close your eyes. And I'm going to tell you 6 statements. And I want you to put your hand up and keep it up if any of them is something that you've felt as behaviour that you've done through your career. So I'd like you to close your eyes now. I've given in to peer pressure or acted against my better judgment. And I keep them up as you go. I've spent excessive time rationalising my behaviours or choices to myself. I felt shame or embarrassment about something I've said or done. I've agonised over a decision either before or after making it. I've experienced guilt or regret about my actions. I felt defeated or hopeless because I don't know how to address something that feels off. Now open your eyes and look around the room. The statements that the majority of you can put your hands down, the majority of you have just agreed with are the signs and symptoms of cognitive dissonance. The perception of contradictory information and the mental toll of dealing with that. How it feels to live a lie. It's very similar to something that I've dealt with. The distress a person experiences due to a mismatch between their gender identity and their sex assigned at birth. How it feels when you're living a lie. But the lie that you are living, the lie that we are all living, is that you are not living in a binary world. And this is a lie that is hurting us, it's hurting our work, and it's hurting society at large. Now, perhaps there are some of you in the room who would disagree with me vehemently that gender is on a spectrum, that sexuality is on a spectrum. But as I'm sure most of you have done junior school physics, I don't think anyone would agree with me that light and colour are. Yet, a 2007 study looked at Russian speakers who have 2 words, 2 separate colours for light blue and dark blue, as we would call them in English. And so when they look at that spectrum, they can see a spectrum. There's this between 2 areas. We see blue. Now, when they were asked to tell the difference between those and pick out the individual one that was slightly different, they were 10% faster than English speakers at doing so. Now, it's not a genetic thing here. There was another study done in 2012 with Greek speakers who also have 2 words. I'm not pronouncing either of these 4 words, by the way. I tried before. And Greek speakers who had been in an English-speaking world for quite some time lost that ability. The reality hadn't changed. The shades of blue were the same, but they had lost the ability to tell the difference. Language had changed their experience of reality. So language doesn't help you find reality, it actively creates it for you. Now, perhaps the best example of enforced binary language in our world is Dave Trott's binary brief. And he wrote about it recently in Campaign, where he said, I know binary isn't a very popular expression at present, but I like things binary. I like black and white, up and down, in or out, yes or no, on or off, hot or cold. I like clarity. Grey decisions just mean a fudge. There's no clarity, so no one's responsible. Everyone's got an excuse, somewhere to hide. Well, I assure you, as someone in a grey area, there is nowhere to hide. But Dave Trott is wrong. He doesn't like clarity. What he likes is certainty. He wants absolute, dogmatic, this is right. But what value has certainty got for curiosity? No more questions need to be asked. You have the truth. What value is creativity when you have certainty? I told you it would be about you, and I want to ask you 3 questions today. I'm not going to answer them. There will be no certainty from me. I want you to find the clarity yourselves. And these questions are, what work do you want to make? What world do you want to build? And what kind of human being are you? What type of work do you want to make? Do you want to celebrate complexity? Or do you want to lean back on lazy stereotypes? Do you want to reimagine worlds and celebrate hope? Or lean into painful binaries? What type of work do you want to make? What type of world do you want to build? Everyone in this room creates culture. You define the culture that we sit within. We talked about fame earlier. What kind of world do you want to build? The UK was recently named, alongside Russia and Poland, for concerns over extensive and often virulent attacks on LGBT rights. And in fact, the Parliamentary Council of Europe went on to say that the significant increase in anti-trans rhetoric and the views that are given baseless and concerning credibility are at the expense of trans civil liberties and women and children's rights. You create culture. What culture do you want to create? What world do you want to create? And finally, what kind of human being do you want to be? When I was 6 years old, I was in art class, and the teacher said, I'd like you to paint a picture, create a picture. Footballers and ballerinas. Footballers for boys, please. Ballerinas for girls. I was still am, a huge Manchester United fan at 6. But was I going to miss out on amazing sequins because red crayon and who I was? No, red crayon's boring. So I created a ballerina covered from head to toe in pink and silver sequins. The teacher called me out. Not in a nasty way, just confused. Why didn't you make a footballer? It was one of my first experiences as someone assigned male at birth of enforced binary thinking in society. When I took my ballerina home, it was put on the fridge in pride of place, but every time it was mentioned, it was clear that I'd transgressed some imaginary boundary, Something had done, some rule had been broken. So next time, I made a footballer. I didn't bring it home. To my junior school teacher, I was a grey area. I was a grey area that confused binary thinking, that interrupted it and interrupted that cognitive dissonance. So, what kind of person do you want to be? What kind of human being do you want to be? In my essay, I will tell you how to solve binary thinking in your planning, in your professional relationships, in your audience identification, in your creative work, and in your results. But like all spectrums, it's more complicated than that. You're not just strategists, you're not just creatives, you're not just marketeers in this room. You're human beings. Dave Trott's desire for certainty comes from the same place as Suella Braverman's, the Daily Mail's, and my junior school teacher. It is a desire for simplicity in a complicated, overwhelming world. What I want you to do today is ask yourself when you leave, not as a marketer, but as a human being. Leave this room, search for the binaries in the way that you approach your relationships with friends, with family, with lovers. Find the binaries to be broken in the way that you experience your body, your brain, yourself. I assure you they are there waiting to be broken. But actually, the one question I want to leave you with, and it doesn't matter how you answer it, how you answer the question of what human you want to be, know only this: whatever answer you come to, reality will not change. Like those shades of blue from earlier, the spectrum will still exist. I will still exist. So I believe we need to embrace our non-binary world. When you're in the office next and you hear the phrase, a bit more complicated than that, don't wince. That is an opportunity for curiosity, an opportunity for creativity. Because if you don't, you are doomed to certainty. Thank you very much.